in Louisville, however you pronounce it, Kentucky. I've been making the rounds of the Midwest, doing whistle-stop tours and stops along the way, hearing about innovation and tech in mini hubs. I've been to Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Flint, Detroit, Indianapolis, Portsmouth, Ashland, Louisville, next Lexington, and West Virginia, Charleston, Morgantown, Columbus, Ohio, Dayton, Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio, what did I miss? Toledo, Ohio. I'm originally from New York. Actually, I'm originally from Ohio, Southeast Ohio, near Athens. I went to school at Ohio University where my father taught, and we taught history, so I'm kind of following in his footsteps, a little bit of history here. And then I moved to New York and started my career as a journalist there. And from there, I was in New York City, met my husband, who's with us today in New York. He's a New York City lawyer. Then I started covering technology and innovation. Went to Silicon Valley, joined the hottest magazine of its time, Red Herring magazine. I don't know how many of you remember it, but it was the tech crunch of its time, tech crunch plus, because it was print and digital, and the issues were about 400 pages. We had 100 editorial staffers. It was a very exciting time because we were in the middle of the dot-com boom, and there were lots of parties, lots of rooftop parties, lots of money sloshing around because there was so much venture capital funding. Then we went through the dot-com bust.
So you got to build a rooftop.
Yeah, there's so much for the rooftop. So I got on the fast boat to China because I was following all the venture capitalists and where their money was going. And believe it or not, it was going to China and India back then. That was the new frontier. They were not coming to the Midwest then. They were going to emerging markets overseas, which were mainly India and China. So I followed, like a good journalist, followed that money and that venture capital trail to China and India, and hit that just right as it was opening up. So I got to interview the leaders behind Alibaba, Baidu, Tencent, TikTok, you name it, DD, which just went public under the stock exchange last week. I've been to DD several times. I've been to Alibaba several times at Baidu. Anyhow, cut a long story short, I'm looking to do sort of the same thing here in the Midwest. Discover the new innovators, discover them before they become famous, discover them before they go public, get acquired. I think I have a good nose for the news because I'm always a little bit ahead of the news. I was way ahead on China. My first book on China came out in 2008. It said how China was winning the tech race. Rather premature, but now we can see that China is a real threat to our technology leadership. And now it's become like almost a turf war, a tech war between U.S. and China. In fact, I was just interviewed yesterday on Bloomberg, right here in Louisville, Bloomberg, talking about the DD issue, the IPO, and the pushback, and what's happening to all these Chinese companies that went public in the U.S. So it's really tense times around U.S.-China. But I think now what I'm seeing from Silicon Valley is since the pandemic, there's been an opening up to new frontiers. I'm seeing venture capitalists who were usually just investing within a 30-mile radius of their office. That was the fail-safe, 100% guarantee, success route, but not so much now because remote working, you can do work from anywhere, and now we're seeing tech talent leave Silicon Valley, leave New York, leave Boston, go to the new emerging markets within the U.S. So I'm on that venture trail. I'm early, I think. Although in my Lancaster, Ohio parade on 4th of July parade on Monday, who did I see in the parade? J.D. Vance, the Willie Elegy author. He's a venture capitalist too. There he was in the parade. I just couldn't believe it, in my hometown parade. Of course, I'm a big fan. I've interviewed well over 100 people on this new book, which will be out when I finish it in mid-August. Then it will go through the usual editorial process and be published. It's being published by Cambridge, Massachusetts publisher. So I'm excited about that. And what else can I tell you? I've been very interested to see what's happening here in the Midwest, and I'm here to learn more.
Awesome. Great. Tony or Demetrius, who wants to take it off?
Well, my name is Tony Ellis. I am the Executive Director of KY Innovation, which is the state's organization that sponsors and supports entrepreneurship, startups, university commercialization, tech transfer, manages our state investment funds, works with youth entrepreneurship. So a lot of different experiences, and I'm also the general counsel of the cabinet. So I try to keep us out of trouble. And I've had that role, I guess, for about almost 2 years now. So I've had an opportunity to see a lot of the innovation that's happening here. I think you're right. The Midwest is clearly the next area to boom. And we're seeing, more talent coming here. We're seeing more people moving here. We're getting more inquiries at a cabinet for economic development level from large corporations because they see talent shifting, which is great and exciting. But I think that your point about the competition with China is a strong one because that's part of why they're doing the Endless Frontiers Act, or now what are they calling it now? It's the Innovation and Competition Act. The United States recognizes we haven't made a huge investment in innovation, research, and design for 2 decades, and it's now time to do that. And I think their focus on trying to build regional hubs that have specialties can really reinvigorate us and takes advantage and recognizes the talent we already have here. So I'm really excited about it. I think it's great. I think the competition, though, is really interesting because it's not just United States versus China. Every city in the Midwest right now is competing for the same talent. We're all looking to say we want people to move back to here because X. Every city's trying to figure out the right way to do this and create sort of just the right mix of the arts and quality of life and enough of a talent pool for that particular area to thrive. So I'd love to understand and see what you're seeing as trends. You're visiting all these places. We're talking to a lot of the leaders of these places as well. Going to Pittsburgh on Thursday to meet with the Ben Franklin Institute folks. And Carnegie Mellon. And a lot of, I say competition lightly and loosely because we're seeing a lot of people welcome and open to sharing ideas. And it hasn't been that there's one particular idea that's better than all the rest. It seems like everybody's trying to do roughly the same thing, creating an economy and community that people want to be a part of and would want to choose to move to. It's just really about the people that you get in the leadership positions that drive that focus and sense of community and well-being. Folks like Jackson and Anker and Demetrius, and I still remember our first phone call when I took this job. And so as you get people that step up and take a leadership role and get more inclusive and keep seeding the ecosystem, I think we've got a really good shot. I love where Kentucky's positioned. I like our chances. I am betting on us. We bought a house here, so it's really it's true though. We look at our position and our talent. There are areas where our focus needs to shift a little bit because we need to think about playing in the areas where if you could be anywhere in the country, why would you choose Kentucky? There are a number of industries where if you could be anywhere in the country, Kentucky's where you want to be. Manufacturing, robotics, shipping and logistics. Got a huge healthcare system here, so we're excited. But I'd love to hear what you're seeing. That's what interests me in this discussion. You visited everywhere. Tell us what's happening out there.
Okay, well, I can tell you I have learned a lot. And I read an article on what's happening in West Virginia for CNBC. I don't know if you saw that. But it was about Hyperloop is moving into West Virginia to do testing and certification of their new mass transit, or that tunnel truck. So that's what's happening. And John Chambers, what I found is there has to be a champion behind these ideas. And so in West Virginia,
CEO of Cisco.
Yes,
Yeah.
so John Chambers is connected with, because he's from West Virginia. He went to West Virginia University, and they're doing this West Virginia Forward movement. So anyhow, he got this idea that, because he knows Richard Branson of Hyperloop, he got Hyperloop to come in and do the testing. And they're going to do it on an 800-acre former coal mine. So this like fits into the story of what I'm seeing throughout the Midwest, revitalization, reuse, and champions who take leadership positions and make things happen, with encouraging the new entrepreneurial talent that's coming up, with lots of programs. We certainly Carnegie Mellon. It's great that you're going to go see them, because I think each place has to have some drivers. Universities, R&D hubs, that sort of accelerators. So anyhow, be happy to share a little bit more as we go along.
It's interesting that you mentioned the connection. So the governor's really focused on trying to create the fertile seeding ground to build the economy of the future, and he's investing in it. We're investing more right now in entrepreneurship than we ever have. But when you look at why people move to different areas, it's only two reasons: jobs and family. That's it. 86%, all the studies, you look at the van line studies, the U-Haul studies, everybody moves because they're either getting a really cool job they want to take or family. Lifestyle, which is what we always focus on in our ads. Look at our rock climbing. We have the Gorge. It's amazing. Less than 4%. More people move to Kentucky for retirement than because of our beautiful scenery. So that connection, West Virginia got Hyperloop because the CEO of Cisco is from there, has a friend, Richard Branson, who's creating it, and they cut a deal.
Yeah.
We're working right now to try to figure out who's in our network from Kentucky. Those are the most likely people that are going to come back and do something interesting.
Well, that's right.
They grew up here, they went to UK, or they, have some connection to Northern Kentucky, or they passed through and had a wild, 3 months of a summer vacation. Every single one of those people are our best prospects to come home and do something.
Absolutely. So I was at the Youngstown Business Incubator, Youngstown, Ohio, and what they have done is their executive director looked at all the LinkedIn connections from anyone who had ever been through Youngstown or Youngstown State University, and he mined that. Okay, come back, let's have a discussion, come back, let's have a big, and so he used his LinkedIn connections. And I thought it was amazing. They got scholarships and donations this way, the Youngstown Business Incubator. So I thought that was a really interesting, pioneering business model.
Did he cold email?
What?
He probably sent a lot of cold emails.
Oh, I'm sure you did, on LinkedIn connections.
Yeah, best way to do it. We get more success out of cold emails than any other connection way. A funny cold email, 3 sentences, will change, change the world.
Yeah. So that was interesting, the LinkedIn connections. And so I found you through Twitter, actually.
Oh gosh, well, I took this job. I did not have a Twitter account, but rapidly learned, that's where the buzz is. The Brackeens are great.
Yeah.
Brian and Candace Brackeen, phenomenal Twitter users. They figured out how to use it effectively and generate buzz. Francisco Suarez in Miami, nobody if you look across the Kentucky ecosystem, we do not use social media in a positive way at all. Very few people here are actively promoting themselves on social media as a region or a state. They may promote their companies, but in terms of the regional, welcome to Kentucky, it's awesome here that you're seeing in Miami or Austin, those verbal champions, it's hard to generate that unless the community sort of embraces social media and does it.
Right.
So we've instituted across all of our hubs, it sounds silly, but like a friend, whether they're your actual friend or not, like their posts, because people look at that to see how active or engaged the community is.
They do.
Well, I would say no. You look at Encore,
Yeah.
Daily Show, New York Times,
Yep.
PBS NewsHour, all in the past 2 years.
It feels soon.
Training tech talent, hiring hundreds of people to create 10,000 plus tech jobs. It's happening here, period.
You're not wrong about that. I'm just kidding.
We're doing, quick intro. We are an IT services firm. This is. We work with GE Appliances on their stealth projects and building mobile apps to their hardware. As we were growing, we had to become also a workforce development company because talent was hard to find. So we actually had to add that component. Since we've outsourced, so we built in the first IT apprenticeship programs in the country that the Department of Labor has mimicked around the country to kind of be a sort of benchmark of how to really build. So anyway, so that's kind of what we do. But to the point is that my parents immigrated here in a small town, Owensboro, which is about 2 hours away. And I decided to come back because I lived everywhere else. I lived in San Francisco, I lived in Chicago, DC, and I said, hey, I've done it, and I get it, but I'd rather be somewhere a little more, I wouldn't say just easier to live, but also a place where we can make some impact. So Kentucky was a natural calling, and so we stayed, and here we are.
Okay, that's great. I mean, it's very interesting that you had to create this workforce development company, because I think I heard that from others. For instance, Drive Capital in Columbus, Ohio. They're introducing venture capital to a number of entrepreneurs, and they basically had to start pretty much, from scratch, right? I'm sure you've met with the
I have.
Drive Capital.
Columbus they're all different. Every city has a different game plan. They have different assets and resources. They have Ohio State. We of course have a university as well, but Ohio State pipeline to larger, more I guess more accomplished university, or more university that have a stronger computer science or technology training program. Their problem is not creating the talent. Their problem is scarcity. They have too many companies. There's so many companies fighting for the same people. We've actually opened an office in Atlanta because the Atlanta company said we're tired of poaching each other's employees. So they got the CIOs of the five biggest companies came to me and said, "Can you build us some talent?" And I said, "Sure." And they're kind of, they're not in competition, but they're also trying to poach each other's people. So we're building that for. So it's a very interesting problem that we have in Louisville. It's not the same problem they have in Pittsburgh, not the same problem they have in San Francisco. But anyway, we're trying to do our part to add our piece.
So then, how does your business? How is it structured? Then are these two separate units? Or
Yeah, we have two business. Well, yeah, we have three business lines. One is our IT software engineering is one. We have a president who owns that line of business. The BPO is the we launched into after the pandemic. So it's a new line of business. IT support, contact centers of service type of stuff. So a little more advanced. It's not a customer service center, it's IT support center, so that's another one we built. And then the third one is our skills and workforce development program. We also have launched a foundation that helps fund parts of the training program. So we basically those are the two lines of business, and the skills program feeds into both of them.
Okay.
So through our apprenticeship model, we have senior level talent, 3 to 7 year experienced people that take a team of 4 or 5 juniors and maybe 2 mids. And then you go launch, be a work on a project. So in that room over there, you're seeing some apprentices, you're seeing some mid-levels, you're seeing some senior people who's guiding the work. But the velocity of the work, when we just put senior people on projects for our large project, we found out we were 50% faster than our customers. So we were waiting for them to catch up. So I said, fine, let's add some junior people to it, and we're 36% faster than our customers. They don't know the difference. But we slowed down a little bit, but it also helped build a pipeline of talent for us to keep our customers happy, not have attrition at the levels that we see in other companies. So our reasons for doing it are both altruistic and capitalistic at the same time.
Right. Are you privately funded? How would you have any state government money?
We took some government money to do some pilots in the past. It's not the best money to take because it's pretty hyper focused. So we fund all of our programs.
Okay.
So we have through our foundation or through we have to sign a contract with the city of Frankfort, Kentucky. So the private donor gave some money for training, our foundation gave some money for training, and the city invested because that was their investment into kind of upskilling their citizens. So for me, I think, and kind of where I was going to take, where I think Louisville and Kentucky is, and I'll kind of close here, but we have to invest. We have to treat our citizens as infrastructure, and just like we need roads, and the infrastructure bills are more interesting to me than the competition bills. I think venture capitalists and research universities and all sorts of people will gobble that allocation up. But on the infrastructure side, if we're talking about, you know, airports, roads, bridges, but most importantly broadband, that's going to be more interesting, because I can find people in any part of the world to train. That's easy. There's enough hungry people and driven people, and there'd be never a problem finding people. We just have a problem finding companies willing to give them a chance.
Okay.
So,
And when did you start the company?
2011.
10-year anniversary, man.
It was. Glutton for punishment.
And how big is your team?
We're at 325 ish,
And revenue-wise, small, medium?
medium.
Okay.
Depends on who you ask, I guess. I mean, Silicon Valley small. Kentucky, we're medium.
Okay. Well, good. Sounds very entrepreneurial. Creating all these different revenue streams, even the IT outsourcing part of it.
Yeah, it was a need. I mean, it was a need that a trusted client came to us, and that's what our clients trust us now. So we've got some pretty big logos on our they're not just buying one-off 5 people to say I'm doing some good. Like for example, your Youngstown example, where people are writing donations for scholarships and funding. That's great. Not knocking that, but I'd rather have heard that somebody put a delivery center in Youngstown and really made a major infrastructure investment like that. So, which is fine. You can get people to donate money to cities, but if you don't have the entrepreneurs there 10xing that investment, that's what I think is missing.
Well, okay. Yeah, I'd like to hear a little bit more about some of the new companies that are coming in, because I'm seeing that in every city that I go to. There's lots of startups, and lots of build out, and on the other hand, there's lots of companies that have gone away. Like if I looked at Akron, there's one tire company left out of the original 4. They all left. All the steel companies left. All the coal mining left. Throughout the Midwest, this is a story of coming back. Really, it's coming back, and through technology innovation, because technology touches everything today. So it's almost like Rust Belt to Tech Belt.
Well, it's the story of entrepreneurship, right? So Louisville wasn't a healthcare city until 2 entrepreneurs started a healthcare company called Humana, and it became a healthcare city because of the entrepreneurs, not because of some kind of top-down situation.
Yeah.
So you got to follow the entrepreneurs, and the entrepreneurs, not just Louisville, but Cincinnati, Indianapolis, and across the Midwest, are driving these different industries forward via technology. And they're all technology.
Yeah.
And so it's really just reading a playbook that's already occurred in the past and then projecting it forward. So Julia's company, it's a healthcare company, but it's driven by technology.
Sure.
Demetrius, insurance company, but it's driven by technology.
Right.
So you could say, oh, well, it's a traditional healthcare company or it's an insurance company.
Right.
Well, yeah, but it's driven by the technology that's pushing it forward, and that's inexplicably happening everywhere. And when we opened our Endeavor office here in 2015 and started the efforts in 2014, people thought we were just completely crazy. Like, there's not going to be any good companies, there's not going to be good entrepreneurs, there's not going to be anything. And to some degree, it's not even a fair playing field, because we keep seeing them year after year after year after year. They're here, and it's growing, and it's going to continue forward, and it's a trend we're really bullish on.
I would have moved our company to Atlanta if Endeavor wasn't here.
Oh, really? So how did they help?
connected me to people. I was wondering where's the billionaire entrepreneurs that are in this community that are not on the Chamber of Commerce board. They're not anywhere. They're not present. How do I learn to build a $1 billion company if I can't talk to someone who's done it? And then it wasn't just in Louisville, it was the global network. So I started meeting people, I started meeting other entrepreneurs in the community, people here that are friends and colleagues now that I never would have met otherwise.
By the way, did you see Argentina beat Colombia in the Copa?
I did see that.
So what's happening with Guibert? He's fired up. Guibert's a great entrepreneur. He's from Argentina.
Case in my company mimics a similar company based in Argentina. That's an $8 billion company now. The founder of it has come to Louisville several times. I can text him, and I have had conversations about once a quarter to just tell him what I'm doing, and he gives me advice. And he says, "You're doing these things right. Think about these things." And we don't have that. I mean, I'm being completely honest. That this sort of support network that even Larry's doing, that Jackson and Endeavor are doing. These are important because you don't have connective tissue between everybody.
Right.
It's a lonely place.
Yeah.
And I had support in Atlanta. I didn't have any support here 5 years ago. So, or 5 years ago.
What about your company? You're a brand new company.
Yeah.
But you got deals with Microsoft. I mean, all kinds of big deals out of Southern Indiana.
Yeah, and we're all remote too. So my name is Julia. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Arcs Lightning. So we're a digital healthcare company that's focused on taking the archaic paper process that exists when patients start on specialty meds into a technology process. So we started January 2020, right before COVID. It's been I guess, really quick 16, 17 months, I think that we're at. We raised $3 million in capital. We have contracts with major organizations. Humana is one of them, Microsoft. We're in their startup program that is supporting us from a product perspective and a co-selling and co-marketing perspective. We've got providers using our platform. We're seeing that we're increasing speed to therapy from weeks and months to just days for patients that are on these meds treating rare chronic diseases. It's kind of a whirlwind. I'm in the chaos of startup mode because we're at maybe 17, 18, 19 employees, something like that.
Okay.
Oh wow.
How did you get into this? And why did you want to do a startup?
So it was kind of just accidental. I never looked at myself as an entrepreneur. I build really good innovative products that I've been able to launch and scale in the market and that have touched millions of people with other technologies. And my career led me from a big Fortune 500 company down to smaller and smaller throughout it. And I was able to be exposed to other startup founders and seeing the success that they had and some of the financial independence that came with it, that I saw this opportunity. It was a product that I probably would have built at any of the other organizations I worked at the last couple years, but I had a really good network around me that just said, Julie, try to do it on your own. If you fail, what's the worst thing that can happen? And then luckily, I found the community locally with 2 accelerator programs that we were fortunate enough to get into, and we had product market fit right from the beginning. So as we were bringing our product to market, I was going through the 2 accelerators, and it was kind of like a one-on-one schooling of education that I needed because every week the curriculum kind of applied to something I was going through.
Oh, great. Are you originally from here?
No, I am from Pennsylvania originally and lived
You know the Philly person?
Scranton.
But
still Pennsylvania pride.
I was just in Philly, that's where,
lived in Princeton before I moved out here. My husband's born and raised in Southern Indiana, so
Okay.
moved out here. We were here, but a bunch of my team actually we relocated from Des Moines. So my co-founder was from Des Moines, Iowa. He and I worked together at another organization. He moved down in January, and then a couple of our developers moved from there down here. So we're convincing people to follow us. Cost of living here is great too, so the capital goes a lot further than
Sure.
if we were in Philly or Princeton.
Yeah, I just drove through Scranton on the way here from New York. I've been driving all over the Midwest. I know all the routes now. Anyhow, so all right, that's good. So what was the Fortune 500 company that you were working with?
I was with Novo for, well, I guess there might not be Fortune 500, but they're one of the top
Okay.
pharma companies, yeah, they're close. So I was there.
And biggest lesson learned as an entrepreneur?
Just
there's-
that one.
There, I'll never know everything, but there's people around me that do.
Oh, okay.
So
Sure.
that's the biggest thing.
And your talent is, you said you have some coming in from Des Moines and other places as well. Have you been able to find the people that you need here in this community?
Yeah, we've been able to hire here locally since we started right before COVID. Like, we don't have an office yet, so.
Oh, okay, because you said remote, everyone's working remotely, right?
Yeah, everyone's remote still, so we're finally hitting that path of COVID maybe is gone. I feel like everybody feels like it's gone, so
Yeah.
what should we do and
Yeah.
how do we transition from a completely remote company to an in-person company? What does that look like? What's the balance? And should we do it? When should we do it? Is kind of what we're looking at.
And you said you raised $3 million as well.
Congrats.
It's some. Can you give us any more detail about that?
Yeah, so I did, in August of last year, I did $1 million convertible note. I went out to, I think, 14 people, organizations, and 12 ended up investing in us. First Data Bank is our first, they're one of our strategic partners and an investor of ours. They touch about 90% of all the electronic health records in the nation from a drug community perspective, so they've white labeled our product and they're offering it to their physician users. Then I converted that note and raised $2 million in April, which was led by HealthX Ventures at Madison, Wisconsin. So they're the only health tech fund that is in Epic's backyard, which is big EHR. So they led the rounds, and then the rest of my no-fillers took some of the rounds as well. We were really fortunate. I was oversubscribed in both rounds, but I took the capital down just because we wanted to base ourselves on valuation and make sure that we were raising as needed based on the plan and budget to protect my shareholders.
Wow. Okay. Good. Spoken like a veteran Silicon Valley entrepreneur.
Yeah, I just couldn't get comfortable with the dilution. It just,
I see.
for the money, it was one of those things. And I really believe in our pipeline and what we're doing. And we've been really fortunate because of that product market fit that we don't have a sales team yet, but our website brings in all the big pharmacies in the nation. And there's 15 pharmacies that control about 98% of all the specialty scripts. I think we're talking to 10 of them, all of which they've kind of approached us, which is fabulous because of the PR that's been behind us, some of the involvement.
Was it helpful at all that Humana is here? Did that come into play?
Well, I don't know if it was helpful. There's a lot of health tech here. So for our business, there's Humana and Arcs Crossroads, which is now branded as CoverMeds, which is McKesson, and PharmaCord, and Nipper RX, and like there are so many potential clients of ours locally that Opco 360 and Bright Spring, and it's really interesting because when I look at my target market of the customers I'm going after, there's probably 40 large organizations, and probably 10 of them are in this market locally. So I I don't think it influenced me starting the organization here. I moved here because of my husband, so I would have started the organization probably wherever I lived. But
There it is.
yeah, but I think that it makes conversations easier and awareness easier. Like the Bright Springs story, we were not talking to on Go 316 Bright Springs, but they saw a bunch of articles in the local business journal. The next thing I knew was I had a call to meet with their CEO. So things like that in a market like this is helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, Demetrius Gray, co-founder, CEO of WeatherCheck. WeatherCheck is a shell of its former self. It was Kentucky's first Y Combinator company. So
You can say that again.
huh?
You can say that again.
Oh, it's Kentucky's first Y Combinator company. And we focused at the time on damage probability in the property and casualty industry. So determining what structures are damaged by severe weather events, so that policyholders would know that they should file a claim against their homeowner's insurance. And so that worked actually really well. The technology worked perfectly, except for the fact that we didn't realize that the financial wins of insurance didn't make the product work. So basically we were exposing all the insurance claims that the insurance company should have paid instead of the inverse. They don't really like that when you tell them, hey, you should probably pay that claim over there. It creates a whole fiduciary problem with their state regulators. So we slowly wound the company down because we had full meteorology teams, and most of those people were hired here locally or throughout Kentucky. Some of those folks came from the University of Kentucky that has one of the, didn't know this at the time, foremost crop insurance programs in the world. And what we really discovered though is that we had figured out how to successfully fund insurance claims. And so with the permission of our board, I spun a separate company called Claim Credit that we just raised $100 million to fund insurance claims. Because what we realized was that at the end of the day, part of the reason that things like Hurricane Katrina and some of these natural disasters go so slowly is because the payment process is so slow. And Wall Street really hadn't sort of looked specifically at insurance claims and a finance vehicle so that you could speed up the overall proceeds from the carrier. So we're doing that. We launched August the 1st. And so we're living downstairs in the co-working space right now. And so I was able to steal a few of the team members over from the WeatherCheck team. And yeah, we're really excited. Our hope is that we can create an all-new asset class, which is really important when you're in a sort of yield-starved environment. And so I've never had an easier time raising money, which is kind of cool. We knew that we had something when we raised we got a term sheet for $75 million here locally. So I was like, oh, somebody here has $75 million just laying around. And so, yeah, that's what we're building. From an overall, Stacy just walked in the room. We worked on a number of deals together, and I am a dabbling entrepreneur, so I've got a lot of other shit going on all the time. So we worked on a Bitcoin mining deal together, and I was just down at my farm in Western Kentucky, and I was thinking I decided that I really don't always enjoy going there because it's really close to my hometown, and like the hometown is like stuck in 1984. Like, you know.
Random year.
Yeah, well.
You sort of pulled out there.
It was the year my cousin was born, and
Okay.
he's terrible.
Okay. We'll edit that part out. I'm not trying to create family drama in Western Kentucky.
Your cousin had to have like some like break the space-time fabric to stop a town from aging.
I mean, yeah, let me just tell you. So, but it's sort of like
Is this John Prine Paradise?
No, listen. It's stuck in time, but it also has the audacity.
Is your cousin running the town?
No.
Do we need to call the Rock?
No,
I've seen this play out.
But they have the audacity to call themselves the best town on earth. But it seemed to me,
Really?
yeah, they do. Like that's the town slogan, the best town on earth. It's a bold statement, but
He presumably see you did the research.
yeah, I'm not sure. They've got a country song and everything. So,
The best town.
What town is this?
Madisonville, Kentucky.
Oh no. Oh my gosh, that's Muhlenberg.
Yeah, that is.
That's the John Prine song though.
Yes, it is. But it seems to me that there's a gap. Like, so you have a very agrarian community.
Yeah.
And then you have, coal mine community and stuff like that. But it's like the innovation. There's a gap between this sort of advanced technology that we're doing up here, where we're predicting where storms are going to, hit specific houses, and then there's like this sort of very basic level work that's being done right here. And so I drove around town, like literally all 4th of July weekend, thinking to myself, okay, how do you bridge this gap between like all these, cornfields that I'm driving through and
The future.
the future? Like what is it? Like what physically needs to be here? What needs to be true? And so I couldn't quite get there. Obviously we've done some of this stuff in oil and gas, and my grandfather invented the horizontal drill for fracking, and had a big exit to Halliburton in the 90s. But and he's there in that community, and all he
Does
thinks
he know your feelings about it?
yeah, I mean, like he was in the car, like, and so like, and we were sitting there thinking like, we're just in a weird environment where it seems like the knowledge of what to do is separate from the people, right? It's like you got a whole bunch of people out there who are looking for something to do, and really almost need to be told what to do.
Yeah.
And that maybe doesn't sound the way that it should, but
They need guidance.
We'll have to edit his whole section.
yeah.
Landed perfect.
They need guidance in terms of like what the opportunities are, while simultaneously, like almost being placed within opportunity. And so, like in that small town, like
People don't know what they have until they're what they could have until they're exposed to it. I mean, and
That's
right.
right.
Paraphrasing Steve Jobs, I mean, you look at like how did somebody know they needed a search engine before they had one? How did somebody know they wanted a smartphone before they had one? So I mean, generally that's what entrepreneurs do, is they look at the world the way it could be, not the way it is.
Yeah. So I like your comment about the cornfields, because I've thought about that too. And actually, I think it's kind of sad to see these cornfields going and seeing just real estate happening, just housing developments, and data centers. So somehow there needs to be more planning that's going into it, because we have to have some cornfields left, and we have to have some nature left. It can't.
We got 6 major greenhouses about 2 hours away. We're good.
Yeah, everybody talks about Austin, Texas. I went there as part of my exploration a year before I started really exclusively focusing on the Midwest. It was so sad to me. I said, all these ranches, there's one more Amazon, and here's another one here. And I said, are you going to have any ranches left? They said, we got plenty of ranch land left. And I'm saying, there's another factory, and there's another one, and they were just going crazy about promoting it. But anyhow, yeah, I mean, definitely things have to be done, because if you go through towns like Toledo, it's just devastated. It's just a shell of itself. You know, it's just abandoned homes and abandoned factories and weedy lots and people with nothing to do. And so, you know, there has to be a driving force forward. But I don't want to see everything that good that we have already go away.
15 years ago, this neighborhood you're in was abandoned.
Was it?
It was a shell. This was not a nice neighborhood. In fact,
Right.
the zip code you're in right now is 40202, and 40202 has the lowest per capita income of any zip code in the city of Louisville. And this has been all infill redevelopment that's been done in the last
Yeah.
15 years.
I am seeing a lot of encouraging signs of redevelopment in cities like this, of repurposing and taking existing facilities, not just tearing them down, but actually repurposing them. So that's very encouraging. And I think that that's a common theme throughout the Midwestern cities I've seen, to various degrees. You know, some are farther along than others. But, and then also seeing the specialized tech zones happening, like in Pittsburgh with Robotics Row, or Cleveland with the Health Tech Corridor, or Indianapolis with Software as a Service. They're developing specialized tech zones. I think that's kind of what I'm seeing. Is you asked me about trends. That's a trend definitely that's happening. I think is this specialization idea.
Well, it's interesting because it's entrepreneurs drive that, right? They drive innovation. But when you look at all of those tech zones, they were by design at a higher level, where the state or city took a huge chunk of change. You know,
Yeah.
so Cleveland is a great example.
Yeah.
Ohio invested billions of dollars in research and development. They took all their tobacco settlement money and they fought a very contentious bond fight, which they lost the first time, and then the second time they won. And they took a huge chunk of change, gave it to the Cleveland Clinic, built a huge facility up there, and you know, that led to a huge portion of their, because you know, entrepreneurs will follow the money.
Yeah.
You know, they'll go to where the investment dollars are.
That's
Drive
right.
Capital is a great example,
Yeah.
where they are very successful in recruiting people to Ohio,
Right.
and particularly Columbus, because they'll say, here's a huge check. There was a company here, Beam.
Oh, yeah, Beam
Dental
Dental, yeah.
was a great company. It was located in the office above my first office in Louisville. And I used to sit around with Frohmeyer and we'd talk about life and what the world would look like. And then one day he got a big check from Drive Capital, and that came with a big requirement, which was that they relocate to Columbus. And now they've pivoted, they've moved into the insurance space, and they're no longer just an interesting toothbrush company. And they now are hiring a huge number of people. So trying to figure out where to focus the dollars that we can invest in large quantities at a state government level is a really, really difficult question, because
Sure.
you have so many different areas and clusters that want to compete, but if you give each cluster a tiny amount of money,
Yeah.
they'll never grow.
That's
you have
right.
to make choices
Yeah.
and decide, you know, these are our focus areas. And the federal government is making us do that right now by saying there are going to be 10 areas that we want you to focus on. We're going to pick 2 clusters in the United States, and all the money we give you will have to go towards that area. And we're in a big discussion right now as Kentucky is where can we really play and make a really aggressive play
Yeah.
that would both win us an award and is consistent with our strengths.
Right.
And, you know, there are some, you know, healthcare is a really good example. We are a really, really strong healthcare community, but the
Yeah.
amount that we're investing at a state level in healthcare, in research at both of our tier 1 research universities pales in comparison to the amount that South Carolina and North Carolina are investing, or, you know, Ohio is investing. So if we make an application, we're never going to win that award, because they're going to give that to the areas that are already much more established. They're not going to try to build something from scratch, you know, effectively.
Right.
They're going to go to something that already has talent. So we've
Right.
got big investments that we're making in advanced manufacturing, in, you know, advanced materials and metals. We had a company, you know, we're getting a lot of success from international metal companies moving here and putting U.S. headquarters. You know, we're seeing that foreign investment happening all over. I think your question is really interesting, Demetrius, and the thing where we see technology is it's going to be choice, right? Right now, people have to move to place A or place B for whatever they're interested in doing. as technology becomes better, and as your internet becomes better in a remote community, you now have the choice to live in Toledo or anywhere that you want to live
Yeah.
based on what your talents are and your skill sets are. The bigger question of how do you guide people, where are they getting their information from, right? Like, you know, Cardi B is the highest paid person ever on FanDuel. She's making like $30 million a day. If that's the message that we're sending, and we look at other social media influencers, you know, how do you get the story across and all the noise that's out there of, you know, what's that quote? You know, we've got this tool in our hand that's the entire world of human knowledge, and instead we watch cat videos and TikTok, right? Like, I mean, that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Like, how do you solve that problem? I don't know the answer to that. You know, how do you convince a huge portion of the population to stop playing around on Facebook and start reading?
So, one of the interesting developments I was noticing in Appalachia, you know, in rural Appalachia, is that they are trying to become Zoom towns. So, but they need to have career counseling. Like, okay, you can't just say we're a Zoom town. To your point about the local talent has to be there, has to know what the Zoom job would be. But, you know, rural areas can now become Zoom towns, can participate in this tech boom. It really is a tech boom. We're in another tech boom today.
I think like there's really, like, from my perspective, like in Kentucky, we ought to probably be backing entrepreneurs, not companies. Generally speaking, because like there are a number of us that have multiple companies, and so it's sort of like I think of it as like there are 30 other companies that I could start, but it's really about the infrastructure around me to continue to start those companies, right? And so like once you realize that you're an entrepreneur, you just sort of live there. And so like for us, I think like the courage to innovate in the way that is comfortable for us is the thing that like I try to encourage people to do. Because like we don't need to be Silicon Valley, we don't need to be all these other places.
Why would we want to?
It's a pain in the ass, let me just tell you.
Well, this is one of the trends is people are leaving because it has become, wildfires, congestion, pricing.
Wildfires, high taxes, high property cost, extraordinarily high turnover. You know, the average engineer stays 18 months on a job in Silicon Valley. I don't know how you build a company doing that.
Yeah.
Well, you can do it, and there are I have a whole lot of friends who are doing it. but I think it's like don't not become something because you're avoiding something else. Just become the thing that you want to be, right? Like, so I think there's always this sort of compare and contrast, like, oh, we don't want to become Silicon Valley. Well, forget Silicon Valley for just a second. What do you want to be, right? And so, and then really take sort of bold, audacious steps to sort of do that. And so, like, that's where my mind is really around, like, some of these rural towns. Like, I think, like, Colorado is a great example of, like, a community in which you have a major metropolitan area, but you have really pockets of innovation that exist outside of Denver proper, which is sort of like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. So, like, I went to see Cal, and there's, like, a tech company in Aspen, and I'm like,
right.
Aspen? Really? Like,
Well, that's because of all those Aspen conferences where all the billionaires come in. And
so you're just kind of like, okay, so like, what does it look like for us, or there's like some of these bedroom communities like Madisonville, like Owensboro, and other places where, frankly, I think they're even better than Louisville in some ways. And so I'm like, okay, like, what does it look like to sort of live that life? The other thing is that, I feel like Kentucky's oftentimes in private beta, right? It's like, it's like we're like, are you on the wait list? Like you need to know somebody to get an invitation to this party. You know what I'm saying? Like no, like it's like the early superhuman users. They're like, do you have superhuman? Do you have superhuman? Like, I feel like that's the way Kentucky is in a way. Like, we're like, we're not so sure we actually want you to come to Kentucky. Like, this is sort of a...
I think it's changing too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
I kind of like that part of it, though. I don't even gonna lie. Like, cause like everybody's like, when you go out in the world, everybody's like,
Well, because you send out your 3 invites a month.
yeah, like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, everybody's like, you got that one Kentucky friend,
Yeah.
you know? And I'm like, that actually works pretty well.
I want to be very clear, we are very open. Demetrius does not speak on behalf of us. We want you to come here. We will open the invite anytime. And that is actually, I mean, that is the hardest part of what we are trying to do, is how do you have all of the stuff that we have more accessible and more public? So state investment funds. The state investment funds that we've had have always been like, hey, I know a guy who knows a guy who works at the state investment fund. We've never done public application processes. So that means we lose all the leads of people that are willing to move home for a job or a resource. We don't use that effectively. So how do we take the things that we're already doing? Even, we have a ton of companies here that have raised hundreds of millions of dollars, but if you ask a lot of tech entrepreneurs, they'll say you can't raise money here. It absolutely can raise money here.
In this building alone, let's see, Climate Vision's $100 million from TPG Growth, Rise Fund, Demetrius has raised about it.
DLP Financial.
And about it's my side hustle.
And that's the side company. So we're talking over 300 million that has been raised just in this room.
Just announced. And so, you know, the real thing is how do you, so we've never had an investor database. We're building that for the first time, which is, you know, if you're going to raise money, this is where the actual money is. And no matter how many times they say they're, you know, industry ambivalent, 89% of where they've invested their money have been in this one particular area. This is where their safe space is. So if you're in that business, we can refer you to them. If you're not in that business, sure, you could call them, but you know, it's unlikely that they're going to make an investment in that space. Or how do you connect people just in industry clusters? You know, we're trying to build industry clusters that are, you know, take a bunch of smart, it used to be take a bunch of smart people, throw them in the room, hope something happened. Now it turns out take a bunch of people that have the same interest and put them in a room, you're far more likely to have interesting things happen. You know, then you got folks like Demetrius and Stacey who have 35 side hustles, so they're in a lot of rooms, but still, you know.
But the thing is, like, we also cross-pollinate. And, you know, one of the things, like, it turns out, like, this was a dream of mine, it was a dream of Bancor's, like, we wanted, like, a home base for entrepreneurialism in Louisville. And, you know, when we were looking for new headquarters, we're like, why don't we build it? Like, why don't we build something bigger than what we need and invite some other folks to come in here? So you've got, you know, co-working space on the first floor, you've got, you know, companies like Interapp and Edge and us on the third and fourth floor, so like you can start a company and kind of matriculate up in the building, but we rented this place out in the middle of a pandemic. You know, and you know, when people weren't even sure that they were ever going to come back to work. And you know, so now we want to do another one. So we just partnered with our developer to buy another half a city block so that we can do another building bigger than this and solve a parking problem and those types of things. But you know, it's those types of things that, you know, start to give us, you know, collisions. You know, we need density collisions so that, you know, because like you were able to get funding on a business for somebody that we actually met, like you met through like a third thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, that is really interesting, the idea of the density and the cluster effect and the specialization. I think those are all really important drivers, and you've got to have the venture capital.
You don't have to have a big cluster.
So,
You don't have to have huge density or a huge cluster. It can be, as long as it's an intentional cluster.
Yeah. And I
You
think
can start with that.
specialization is
Start
the way to go. You know, from what I'm seeing, specialization is the way to go. You know, we don't try to be everything. And to me, you know, Cincinnati has, you know, it has P&G, granted, it has Kroger, it has Fifth Third Bank, it has a lot of good drivers of innovation. It's got, you know, the Brackings and all this, but there's not one specialty out of Cincinnati. Like, is it packaged goods? No, not really. Is it this? No, it's not really that. But a lot of those cities, I could say, Youngstown, 3D, Indianapolis, SAS, Cleveland, Health Tech, Columbus, insurance, you know, Pittsburgh, robotics, AI. And so I think this is the way that Silicon Valley will be looking at it, or is looking at it too, because they'll go where the others are. They are very risk adverse, you know, and they will go like herd mentality where the others are, where there's been proven, you know,
Our place would be a talent hub. Like meaning we're talking to companies in 49 other states and explaining why we can build the talent pool they need if they open a delivery center with us. So if you commit to 500,000 employees that you need over the next 2 to 5 years, we can build it for you, we can manage it for you, and you're actually going to be one of the best jobs in the state. So the companies we're talking to, were never even considering Kentucky until we went to them and showed them the value prop.
Okay.
It's cheaper to live here. You're gonna have less turnover. You're gonna have great quality of life, and you're gonna be able to access a talent pool that you didn't have knew exist in the past. So when we pitch, we're not just saying, can we build you a mobile app? We're thinking, can we build you a long-term workforce that can do this app, that app, this project, that project, and that's so when you look at what do we want to be, Cincinnati, look at Nashville, right? Nashville is healthcare. I mean, country music. So entertainment, if you will. So,
Yeah.
but it's getting expensive to live there. It's getting it's getting Austinized,
Right.
really.
Yeah.
And we, some people say we missed the boat, but you can say to Dimitri's case, it creates a new opportunity to take that overflow and do a lot of
I
things.
was telling
Right.
people we're Nashville 20 years ago. If you look like I remember going to Nashville when I was a kid because I got a lot of family from that area, and like we're Nashville before it just boomed. But Louisville and Nashville is call it 20 years behind Atlanta. But we're in that kind of early boom phase right now for Louisville, and it's crazy. And Kentucky has so many good things going for it. I mean, we talked about this side hustle doing Bitcoin mining, but I'm getting ready to close a $22 million A round on a side hustle. I talked to some investors last night who said they would backstop us with up to $1 billion in debt for some capital acquisitions we need to do. And I'm negotiating a deal to bring about 10% of the world's Bitcoin miners to Kentucky. So I mean, if you look at it, like China shut down 50% of the world's Bitcoin miners 3 weeks ago, and they have to go someplace. And where can they go? And Kentucky is one of the few places that has the type of power, infrastructure, and capacity to be able to support that. I mean, that's a gigawatt of power. My team's been joking because as soon as you say gigawatt, they all think of like power and flux capacitor. I've seen so many flux capacitor memes in the last couple of weeks. But those are really interesting jobs that come here because not only you're building data centers, which don't produce a lot of jobs, but you're actually taking power plants and taking power plants that might have shut down and giving them a long-term useful life because now you've got this major industrial customer that's right next to it.
Yeah, that's a good example. But going back to your point about specialization, how do you select? I mean, how do you determine how you're going to focus your efforts in economic development and green startups?
I'm gonna go hard the opposite direction, Tony.
This is what I can say. We have spent the past year and a half asking all of our university partners if they had to pick a specialty area. Like, yes, we know what they've said for their grant priorities and everything else, but where can we really compete? Like, where can we grow our industries? Where can we get more federal research dollars? That's a natural fit for Kentucky. There are lots of, if you were a company and you could relocate anywhere in the world, what industries would want Kentucky by nature, and we're looking at that of where do we have already existing infrastructure investments? Where do we have large corporations that are going to agree to run a cluster? We're going to try to create 6 to 10 clusters and financially support them.
Okay. Have you determined which ones they are?
No, we're in the process.
Okay.
It's large independent too on who's willing to write the check for it. We can't do it alone as government. If you have things that you're solely dependent on government for, and you don't have outside support, then that means you're solely dependent on politics, and that's not a good place for the entrepreneurial community to be.
Right.
That's not a good place for the
Right.
industries to be.
Yeah.
So we have worked very hard over the past year and a half to try to take all of the entrepreneurial initiatives that we have and make them sustainable, so that their operations are funded independently. Now, Demetrius, you talk about these small communities. Boulder's a great example. So the big difference between communities that have been successful and communities that haven't are that you have altruistic rich people. And that is, you know, a group of people that write the underlying check. So Boulder, with Silicon Flatirons, CU said, we're not gonna fund it anymore. And so they started a capital campaign and they raised $3 million to fund Silicon Flatirons from 9 people who wrote very large checks, who had been founders, who had exited and, you know, sold their companies and said, we believe in this and the value, all those things that happen, the connectivity, the databases, all of that require people require funding. So, you know, that's going to be the question. Who's going to be willing to write a check? We know that the metals industry and advanced materials are willing to write that check. They're highly funded. They're 30 years committed. They've got, you know, the first thing that Vela Ventures is a great example in Germany. Every time they put a headquarters, they create their own venture lab. So we put them in touch with a number of entrepreneur and startup companies. They're going to buy and they're going to write checks to support, you know, that kind of community. And, you know, the same thing is true from Logan Aluminum. They write checks to support entrepreneurship. So we know metals and advanced materials is an easy spot for us. We've got, you know, billions of dollars of investment that are happening. They're long-term projects and they're committed to the idea of being an innovative industry. We know we're always going to need to build things, right? Logistics and supply chain, we know that UPS is going to write a check, and DHL and Amazon, because they're already funding these initiatives. So that's an easy area for us. Healthcare, but what types of healthcare? You know, we're predominantly, we have a lot of life sciences and biosciences work, and that's great, but most of the life sciences and biosciences companies that we grow here immediately are like, I'd really like to be in Boston, or I'd really like to be in this other area. And they pack up and they move, and we may have some version of the company that stays, and there are some that stay here that are tied to the university, but we're not the top choice for a life sciences or biosciences company across the United States. But for other healthcare, we are absolutely the right choice. Healthcare as a service, aging, they're excited to be here. So, you know, we need to look at, we can't play every bet on the board. We have to focus, or else we'll lose every bet on the board.
Right. And are you going to agree or disagree?
So we would have been an absolute failure in terms of Endeavor. We were only the second U.S. office. Endeavor's in 40 countries. At the time that we launched, there was only an office in Miami. And if we had only said we're going to do healthcare and food and beverage and logistics, we'd be supporting maybe 3 or 4 companies.
But you're a different business model. Like you're looking at private investment
It
into individual
seems to me
companies.
that you need to follow the entrepreneurs. And Julia, right, is in the healthcare space, but already said, I didn't start my company because of Humana or because it's a healthcare city. Bitcoin, ad tech, talent, insurtech, weather tech, none of it really has any, you know, connection to the region aside from this is where the entrepreneur wants to be. You back the entrepreneur and then you follow them, period. And if you follow the entrepreneur, you're going to win. If you try to box that up, good luck.
Well, your entrepreneurs will leave.
Yeah, if you look at early venture funds where they have the most risk investing, it's usually they invest in the founders and the entrepreneurs, and they see something that they're going to succeed and drive. You guys have been able to raise an insane amount of money because you've already proven yourself as successful entrepreneurs. I think that when we were raising capital, I didn't raise it here. I have two Louisville investors, and it's like 75 grand of the $3 million on my raise, and it's just because a lot of the funds don't want to provide money until you have another institutional fund that is willing to lead, but that doesn't happen for first-time founders. When you need the capital, because a lot of first-time founders can't self-fund businesses. So I think that investors and VCs that I've seen are willing to invest here regardless of if they have ties here too. So I get calls pretty much every day from funds in California, Boston, Pennsylvania, New York City, big from DC to PE, and it's because there's now that I have a kind of an established market fit and track record and other smart investors who like double down on us. It's yeah, we want to follow on and add on every day. I get asked, "You want to raise capital?" It's like, no, we'll talk in a year.
Yeah, so what you bring up a point that I discovered across all of the market is the shortage of venture capital, the shortage of local and regional venture capital. Only 2 of your investors are from Louisville.
But you know how it happens in Silicon Valley, is that what typically happens is other founders write checks into early stage companies. And so if you're not backing the entrepreneur at a state level, then your successful founders don't get rich enough. So like even when you do if you start diving into some of these spin outs, you start realizing that a lot of times that founder, even though they raised a lot of money, they don't have tons of equity.
So you're hitting on 2 issues that I've talked a number of times about. One is generally somebody that's not an experienced angel investor will generally offer what I would call predatory terms to the angel investment. And I've talked to some of the people in this room about this.
If I could shake my head off my shoulder.
He and I were drinking when he got a term sheet at one point, and I'm like, you know what, you can tell them to go F themselves. And then you can go ahead and use the 4-letter word. A town like this, if you limit your investing to Louisville or Columbus or any town without a lot of investors, and you as an inexperienced entrepreneur are only looking to raise in that town,
Yeah.
you're going to find yourself subject to some predatory angel investors. And we all know people here that have raised an A round where they've given up, or a C round, or an angel round where they've given up 60-70% of their equity, and then that makes them essentially uninvestable for a next round because
Sure.
no serious fund is ever going to believe in an entrepreneur that would make that big of a mistake early on. The second thing is there's this concept that I call Louisville rich. That if you build a company to a $10 million exit here, there's usually hand slapping and Louisville rich. You can take your $10 million and put that into Hilliard Lyons or Goldman Sachs, and you can live well in Louisville the rest of your life. You can't really go out and make venture investments, that type of thing. But if you sell a company for only $10 million in the valley, people are going to look at you so what? Why did you fail? So what we need to do is reset the expectations that you're building on a global stage here. And and what you need to do is build a company that changes the world, changes your industry, and doesn't just change your income.
There's one investor, the first check in the weather check was Michael Boone, and he wrote a $100,000 check, and his directions were, I don't expect you to spend this on the product, go make the world smaller. And so we took that $100,000 and we went to San Francisco and we started making connections. We applied the YC 4 times and we did all of that sort of work really in an effort to say, okay, yeah, the people who we actually need aren't here. It doesn't mean that we're going to move the company. It just means that we're going to go elsewhere to sort of gather the resources that we need and then bring them back here.
Well, just thinking about other models that have worked elsewhere, I'm just thinking about, and we're talking about angel investing, and how you can develop a community of angel investors. For instance, Carnegie Mellon has a group of angel investors. They're all successful, Carnegie Mellon grads, and so they created a community. Okay, then they create a pool of money that can go in, and it's not just one person, then it's a pool of money.
So we have that, not as much I think as anybody would like. Like Bluegrass Angels is a number of wealthy individuals who sort of got together and made $100,000 to $250,000 investments. UK just started a version of this, but we don't have enough of it. Louisville, the past couple of years has not had sort of a designated angel group of any significance that was really putting money in. They just started 2, but neither of those funds have, substantial amounts of money. They would have.
Like a lot of our programs start with somebody in government normally, or somebody who's on the nonprofit side who then starts an initiative.
Right.
But it really does have to be founder-led in a lot of cases. And so I think the thing that I've seen that's most encouraging that I think is going to work really well is we've seen a lot of like entrepreneur in residence roles start to pop up. Like when I think that's the most founder-focused thing that I've seen us do in the past, where there is sort of this wraparound of, hey, this founder needs a job while they're trying to figure out what the next thing is. And that thing may be, I'm going to start a fund, or I'm going to, start my next company. And so we've just now started to see the state and other agencies start to sort of fund these sort of entrepreneur or executive in residence type roles that I think are because like even as I started claiming credit, when I was vetting through it, I called one of those entrepreneurs in residence and said, hey, Kella, like, tear this apart, and he's over at Amplify, and I think that's state funded, right? And so you're sort of like, okay, like who can I call in the ecosystem who's going to know exactly what the hell I got going on here, and because some of the most successful entrepreneurs are just busy, like, so.
Yeah.
I think that, to me, I think that's the ticket.
Right.
Who am I?
Well, this entrepreneurial service program that Ohio has going, where they have regional entrepreneurial service programs, and actually the Rockies are partly funded through that. So you have a similar thing here in Kentucky?
We do. We have 6 regional hubs. But the problem is, for the most part, they're state funded. So Ohio, again, for the most part, they're state funded. But what even some of the biggest Ohio regional hubs are starting to find out is that money is risky, because when it goes, if you are not independently sustainable, you're going to be in trouble. So
Politically, who knows if the budget will be
correct.
approved the next year?
The way the government works, and this is my first go around in government, so I'm still learning, but it's very clear that a single individual can dramatically change the universe.
Yeah.
Right? They could cancel. My job, I could cancel every contract we have right now. With the governor's got to sign off on it, but an individual could literally cancel any state contract, 30 days notice, and we saw that happen in 2018. With the prior administration, all the programs were shut down overnight. Some were brought back slowly, but all programs were shut down. And the entrepreneur, that's busy, they need to know where to go to get information. If you change the name of the organization that has the information and the funding every 2 years, what you're going to find is the whole community is going to throw their hands up and say, F it, right? I'm out. I got to do it on my own. We're working very hard to try to make it much easier to get the information. Our North Star is, if we can shave 30 minutes off of your time because you're busy by making the information really easy for you to find, that's going to be much more successful. Like, there are people in this room that have probably spent a fairly significant amount of money on consultants and services that we provide at the state level for free. KYP TAC is a great example where we have a free program that gets you your government number and helps you, get government contracts that most people don't know about. And that's just because information needs to come from people or a website, and we've never had a good website, and we don't have enough people. But, who's going to write that check? Right now, our local regional hubs, the ones that are functioning well across the state are funded. Awesome Inc. is a great example. They underwrote that organization and then got scrappy and creative and came up with ways to add value to the community. They plaqued a number of high-level entrepreneurs who then, when they got the plaque, were like, oh.
But that's a good example, though. Awesome Inc. was started by
Brian Rainey, an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
That's the thing. When you look at the communities that are successful, a couple entrepreneurs with resources write checks, and that check writing process makes the organization valid, and it's social proof that this is a good place to do it, and other people come along. I don't know who's written a check, and I can tell you right now, I don't know of a single entrepreneur, and we've got a lot of successful ones that have written a check to Amplify. We're the only funder, and if that doesn't change, the organization's going to have to.
Has anybody asked them?
We're about to. I'm gonna ask everybody in this room.
Well, And we inserted in the budget, you know, we want 25% of your money to come from outside sources every contract year. You can't really hold them accountable for that in COVID, you know, that would arguably be unfair, but this is the year, you know, for all of our organizations to raise their own money. And if you're not able to raise money from people in the community, then what that's saying is you're not providing value, right? Nobody is looking at this as something valuable. So you're either not explaining the value you're providing or you're not actually providing value. And in either case, that's something that we need to be focused on.
Well, but it also still seems to me that like in Kentucky, you get into these ecosystem references. We still actually haven't made any big bets on anything really innovative, right? So like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, so like when you look at Kentucky, you're like, it still takes 2 hours to drive between Louisville and Nashville, one of the fastest growing cities in the entire country, right? You know, like
If you can do that in 2 hours.
Yeah,
that's
say-
great.
Was it 3 hours? Okay. You see what I'm saying? Like it still takes an hour to drive between here and here.
Hustle
And,
Demetrius.
you know,
It's a new hustle, Demetrius.
Yeah, I know.
Take you 1 hour.
To store.
It's a Hyperloop guy.
You
It's,
know,
No, I get it. I mean, you know, it was ironic that Drive Capital, their name Drive. When I started driving around the Midwest from one city to the next, okay, I'm driving here, I'm driving here.
Yeah.
Everything's
Since then.
driving. So,
But
yeah,
also,
yeah.
I don't know that it needs to be a hyperloop. I mean, you could do
high-speed rail or whatever.
high-speed rail or even, like
Don't forget that.
yeah, like
California's example on that is gone nowhere.
But a daily helicopter service.
yeah.
You've got all the infrastructure for that.
Yeah. The flying
it's
cars.
instant. Well, not flying cars, just regular helicopters. Like
They're working on flying cars in Dayton.
Oh, really?
Because of the Air Force. You know, that's a cluster effect that's used as a support of the local government, the Air Force, right? So everything in Dayton is around defense technology. I met so many defense technology startups in Dayton. It was really interesting. And they're selling to the Air Force. They're selling back to the Air Force. It's amazing.
I bet they'd be disappointed today to hear that the Jedi contract got canceled. So
Oh, yeah.
it's like a $10 billion defense contract that Microsoft and Amazon have been fighting over for 5 years. And that's to me like one of the challenges is like when you think about it from a cluster perspective, you actually are adding risk into the equation because the truth of the matter is that we don't actually know what the future economy looks like, right? And so we really actually need to be well diversified across all sectors because we're not entirely sure what the future of work looks like.
Well, we know that AI is going to empower a lot more.
That's right.
That we do know that. And we know we're going to have a lot more data.
We know that
But-
there are going to be less manual jobs.
Right.
And so when I look at it, I'm saying, okay, well, you can bet on healthcare all day long, but what happens when, you can bet on, horse racing or whatever, whatever you want to bet on, but really like the sort of strategic thing, and I think why China's really won in a lot of ways is because they took a long view.
True.
They took a 50 to 100 year view a very long time ago. Like,
They took 1,000-year view,
Well,
1,000 years ago.
yeah, and so so I think like when I look across our landscape, like one of the areas that because it's not political, no politician will get. There's no political risk in making an assessment about what's going to happen in 50 years. It's 50 years away, and so frankly, none of those folks are going to be around to actually commit.
It doesn't get you reelected.
Well, big ideas do get you reelected. Big ideas get you reelected. So Arnold Schwarzenegger, perfect example.
Yeah.
High-speed rail in California. And 20 years later, he's no longer the governor. It doesn't even matter anymore.
But Michael
They did make a great video.
Bloomberg in New York City, Michael Bloomberg in New York City has made a big difference. And now they have this Bloomberg beta. I don't know if they've been through town yet or not, but Bloomberg beta with their driving tours to the Midwest. They're bringing groups of venture capitalists from Silicon Valley, New York, Boston to various Midwestern cities.
20 and 50-year plan. I mean,
Yeah,
and then building Cornell Tech.
Yeah.
One of the other issues that I was thinking about is that you do need educational institutions. And if you look, what drove Silicon Valley is you have Stanford and Berkeley.
Yeah.
And, Boston is University of Texas. Virtually every, and obviously
Yeah.
MIT and Harvard Boston. So almost every hub that's a high-tech hub has a strong university connection.
R1 universities. And the other thing is all of these things cost incredible amounts of money. So if you want to build an engineering program that's going to focus on AI, the infrastructure cost of that is $100 million, right? Like, or $1 billion. I mean, MIT just spent, so the problem, the reason that we're talking about clustering is the huge infrastructure expenses that exist that get invested at the university. We have to make predictions at what we think the world will look like in 10 or 20 years because we are a poor state. That's the bottom line. You know, Ohio has 69 Fortune 500 companies. Do you know how many Kentucky has? 2, depending upon Yum's share price. And Yum is not here. Yum's global headquarters is Dallas. KFC is here. Yum has people here. They're technically a Kentucky corporation, but Yum's in Dallas.
But what's the economic impact of that? Like, so like I hear that all the time, but like, what are they really paying in the form of tax?
Here-
it really impacts the bottom line.
Here's the economic impact of it. It's that Procter & Gamble can independently fund half of Cincinnati's arts, entertainment, infrastructure. And it draws, so the 2 reasons people move, jobs, family, that's the job side of things, right? The good jobs that people will take at Procter & Gamble early in their career because they think they want to have a career in product development, they attract people from all over. And once they're there, they stay. So if you move to Cincinnati and you meet a significant other, and now you've got a family in Cincinnati, those people then spin out and either create the companies because they become entrepreneurs, or they're available to work at the companies, or they make the very comfortable the big company salaries. So they're making $350 a year now in P&G, and they're investing as angels back into that community.
Yeah.
A Fortune 500 company is Humana, and think about how much they did for this city, right, and this state. Imagine if we had 20 Humanas here. That's the impact.
Okay.
And the ability to, so your research, Endeavor's research is phenomenal. And in the sense that what they said is, for us, we're unlikely to be able to recruit a Fortune 500 company to Kentucky, right? It's going to be very hard to convince them to uproot. But what we have a really good chance to do is build them, is to build and grow Fortune 500 companies from people like Demetrius and Stacy.
Without looking at the data, I would venture to say every Fortune 500 company we've ever had here has been one that was born here.
Born here. So we need to figure out how do we create a place that people want to grow a Fortune 500 company and can, right? And the issue is what we see at a state level where we say, okay, this is our best chance of success is, where would you want to be? Who would want to be in Kentucky if they could be anywhere?
Now,
What businesses?
I'm actually going to disagree on the start a new program. I think that one of the massive changes we've seen is what I'll call the decentralization and democratization of education. So you've got what Anchor's doing. You've got the Microsoft Future of Work. You've got like U of L. El Toro, we've got 120 employees. We're hiring as many computer and data scientists as we can get. U of L knew that there was a demand for data scientists. They created this MSBA program, came to us, we started hiring people out of the very first class, and then, in meeting with the leadership team for the School of Business, we said, look, we really wish you were teaching this in the class as well. And they said, that's great, none of our professors know it. So, and then they said, do you have anybody that would like to be an adjunct faculty member? So now we have 2 of our people, and I think we're about to have 2 more that become adjunct faculty there. And we're the number 1 or 2 hire out of that program because, we just work with each other, and we work with Anchor, and, we work with Code Louisville.
That's wonderful. We're not trying to create a new program. We're just saying, we think our best chance of success is we're going to have to grow our entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the real problem from a politics standpoint is that everything that we do doesn't pay a dividend politically, right? It's if you give us $1 today, we're going to create a return on that, but it's going to take 7 to 10 years to see results.
Oh, yeah.
And that's two governor cycles, that's 2 Senate races. So we need to do a better job as a community of telling the story of the value proposition of giving us dollars. So
Right.
one change we have implemented across all of our programs is the leverage figures. So we didn't have impact statements before. So we've had every single organization build an impact statement and build in metrics to their programs so that we can then go out and say to government and the legislature and the governor's office, you should give us money because if you give me $1, I can return $8 to this community. We are an investment that will always pay a dividend. And that's a story that sells. But if you just go and say, I need more money for startups, they're not going to have, there's no ribbon cutting there, right? Like the only ribbon cutting is we just spent a ton of money to build this thing. There's no story to tell unless we make that story. So, we're going to call all of you and we're going to do videos, little 30-second videos of why you picked Kentucky. Everything you said today, we're going to put those onto the website so that if you're an entrepreneur or somebody else and wondering why Kentucky's the place, you can go and see hundreds of stories, short, quick videos that say, we've done it here, who you are, what you've done, what you've built.
What's funny to me is so much of what we're talking about that we don't have, we do have. And part of this is through the lens of Endeavor, but Endeavor was staked by entrepreneurs, right? That was not top down. I was the first money in, and then Mr. Jones, the co-founder of Humana, came on board, and the rest kind of became history. And Bear from Argentina, and Encore, and Stacy. Endeavor is owned by the entrepreneurs. It's not owned by anything other than the entrepreneurs and the board members. And Larry is an entrepreneur, right? He's running Amplify. He's started 3 companies. It's entrepreneur-led. I mean, these are multiple things in our community that are entrepreneur-led. This building is entrepreneur-led. The other buildings, entrepreneur-led. So these things are all happening here. And this is my old, investor hat. The beauty of this market, and that includes Cincinnati and Indianapolis, but the beauty of this market is it is in Austin, Texas, which is if we're using venture capital terms, a Series E, F. I mean, super late stage.
Take it out.
Yeah, we'll take it out. It's a Series F. I mean, it's a super cool city, but it's super late stage.
Yeah.
This is a Series A investment. You were in on the joke before everyone else. And they're missing a whole lot of crazy opportunities.
And South by's jumped the shark now. I mean, it's crazy. Like, if you went to South by 20 years ago, it's not the same conference today. And so, I mean, it's, I'm hopeful that, we've got between the Danny Wimmer stuff and Forecastle, like an emerging South by type of scene here built around 3 to 4 different music festivals over the course of the summer.
So for, to punctuate this, so like Endeavor operates in 40 countries, right? And we were the second U.S. office that kind of covers the central Midwest, Kentucky, Indiana, and Ohio. We're now in eight U.S. markets, 26 billion plus in revenue generated by the companies in the Endeavor network last year, over 4 million jobs. The first US-based unicorn for Endeavor. We love our sister cities. It wasn't in Atlanta, it wasn't in Detroit, it wasn't in Miami, it wasn't in Denver. It was App Harvest from here in Kentucky. The first $1 billion IPO company for Endeavor was from here, period. And that's just a fact. And so if anyone doubts that it's possible here, they're out of their mind. I mean, we
So
don't.
is this guy, the founder of that, your entrepreneurial hero then in town? Or who is your entrepreneurial?
He's just one of them. I mean, Jonathan
Yeah.
Webb is just one of them. You've got
Okay.
Stacey Griggs right here. You've got Encore Gopal. You've got Julia, who's the next. I mean, if you stay on the trajectory you're on, you've got Demetrius, Y Combinator, and you've got Chris Good with Climavision, a $100 million raise from TPG Growth. Justin Delaney, big deal with Journal Atlantic recently. I mean,
David Lau,
David Lau,
I
who
mean,
was
third time
entrepreneur.
third
He was
time unicorn.
one of the co-founders of one of the first internet banks. Who's, I mean, there's just story after story. Cedric Francois, Pellis.
Joey Rivera, like we haven't even gotten into.
Put those on your website too.
Well, we're building a website right now, and that is part of it. How do we tell better stories? How do we tell
Not
stories?
just
all
the up
stuff
and
that-
comers, but the ones that were already like.
Absolutely,
I think
completely
the
agree.
big thing is the awareness. So when I started Arts Lightning, it was right when COVID hit. So the world shut down and I was isolated in my house. And I actually ended up going to the Columbus market to get any of my startup support because I didn't find it for as early as I was because I was just incorporated. And shared services and all the things, like when I think back at the money that I wasted in a way because I had to go contract with whoever and I didn't know what the right rates were and what I should be paying for legal services to do X, Y, Z. Like having some of those and the awareness campaigns around it to people that want to start the organizations, because sometimes people have a great idea but fail just because they don't have enough capital initially and they're wasting it on silly stuff. Where once I got tapped into the network, scale up. I would have done that last year with a heartbeat if you guys wanted me, but I didn't know about it. And now I'd love to do it. I just don't have time to sleep, let alone do a program. But
Jake, did you hear that?
That's what it's for. That's what they all say, and it's true. It comes right stage.
yeah.
So,
but it's the awareness for the people when they don't know where to go. Something that comes up, and there's all these snazzy names around it. It doesn't need to be that because when people go to Google, they're gonna type it in and what they really first time startup help. It needs to be SEO that hits on terms that have found somebody that is absolutely clueless about what they're doing is
Building
doing
it.
it.
Edge.
Yeah, well, we're building it on the resource side too.
Yeah.
So there's a part of it too is that people have to be, for us as Amplify, we're pushing out those messages, but we need other people in the community to go oh, you should talk to Amplify. Because, unless you type that in specifically,
Yeah.
you may not find us. I think because we ended up getting connected by 2 or 3 ways to finally get together. I always say, how do we turn 10 meetings into 3 meetings? So how do we push that out to where you don't need me as a gatekeeper to meet Stacy? How do we make all that present up front?
And I think the other thing, so when I look back at my journey, I'm still pretty clueless, but I was really clueless. So when we first talked, and there was a VC fund that I talked to locally, and I literally told the partner, oh, I don't need your money. I was raising $1 million. I had no clue what he was actually doing because I was so uneducated about what a first-time CEO is supposed to do. So being able to clearly articulate, well, I can help you with X, Y, Z in a very easy to understand package is, I think, what else is needed, because I'm pretty sure I passed up on a lot of opportunities for help just because I just wasn't knowledgeable about the help that could have been given.
I think that's one of the differences in the city now is partnerships that didn't exist before. So working with Endeavor, working with Render, around this year of a whole access to capital education series. right? So we can make it very transparent, easy for you to understand, or give you someone to talk to that can help you look at those term sheets, understand how to be fundraising ready, and not give away 60% of your company, because then no one would ever invest in you follow on. But that's something I think historically, you see a lot of reports, we've been operating in silos for so long, I think you're starting to see some of those break down, and we're